While clearing the way for significant reforms in the agriculture sector, the government has cleared 3 key reforms announced under the Atmanirbhar Bharat economic package. The first one is the amendment to the Essential Commodities Act, deregulating commodities like cereals, pulses, oilseeds, edible oils, onions and potatoes. The second is the nod to the Farming Produce Trade Ordinance. This will pave the way for farmers to be able to sell produce anywhere across India. The cabinet has also cleared the Farmers' Agreement on Price Assurance Ordinance. This law will allow them to engage with processors, aggregators, large retailers and exporters. We also spoke with the Agriculture Secretary Sanjay Agarwal to understand how this is going to work. Take a look.
Right now, farmers is bound to take the produce to a particular place, and in this place, he is bound to sell it to only a person who is a licensee. So what the ordinance says, pan-India whole country, minus this physical markets, the 4 markets I talked about, that is defined as a trade area. Right now, no trade of marketable surplus for the scheduled commodities allowed in this trade area. This ordinance says any person who has a PAN card can buy the goods from the farmer, and farmer can obviously sell the market surplus to them. So this is the ecosystem which is created there. Second ecosystem which is part of this ordinance is very important. It basically enables a creation of an electronic platform which are delivery oriented in the country for agriculture produce.
So the idea is to free India's agricultural markets from the limitations imposed by permits and mandis that were originally designed for an era of scarcity. This move now provides more choices to farmers to trade their produce. So what comes next and what is needed to ensure that platforms are able to leverage this opportunity? Joining me now are Thirukumaran Nagarajan, the co-founder and CEO at Ninjacart, and Krishna Kumar, the founder and CEO of Cropin. Thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program. Thiru, let me ask you about what this actually means. You know, the government has put forward 2 separate ordinances. Once they're given the presidential assent and they are executed, perhaps will take some time before the states start to activate their machinery as well. But on ground, given your experience, how significant could this be?
Speaking right, Ninjacart deals particularly with vegetables and fruits, and vegetables and fruits previously is actually APMC rule is actually a state subject.
Yeah.
So we need to really figure out how the states are going to take the instruction from the central and want to change or amend their APMC Act.
Correct.
So that is something we had to wait and watch. But previously also different states are highly advanced. For example, the place where we started, primarily Karnataka, they are actually very pioneers in APMC regulation. They opened up the market, so they give something called as the marketing license, Agri marketing license.
Right.
For example, Ninjacart has Agri marketing license in all the states, and it's also relatively easy to get these licenses. So it's like buying from farmers by organizations where already there. It's just that a little barrier which used to be that licensing thing is actually removed, and the licensing is also not a difficult thing. It has been eased in most of the states. But for the point that remains is still right. You remove this barrier, but how are you going to enable companies to reach out to these farmers? That is primarily is going to be the key thing, right? Like say, still the farmer, right? You enable the farmer to sell it to anyone, but still, how is this channel is going to form?
Yeah.
Right? How private players who wants to buy from farmers can move and do it. The biggest problem here is most of our farmers are marginal farmers.
Exactly.
Though the farmers could be enabled to sell it to a company, but this farmer has very small produce, and at a company level, you have to deal with small farmers. It needs a very big tech platform to really do it. So let's say when we came in, we realized that, and that is one of the key challenges we are solving, right? How do you connect the marginal farmer with the buyer? That is still going to be a challenge, because one big company who wants to buy 1,000 tons, let's say, of let's say tomatoes, right, cannot deal with 1,000 farmers to let's say 10,000 farmers to get this produce.
Right.
So the point is enabling the purchase is the first step. That's a good. That the intentions are good, but how are you going to enable the trade is also going to be crucial.
You're very right about that. In fact, let me place before you, Thiru, the concern that was raised by Avik Saha, who is part of a farmers' organization. And he said, how will you ensure that the farmer gets the price that he deserves? Because as you're absolutely right, farmers in India have small land holdings, are marginal farmers. What is the mechanism that will ensure that the farmer is able to best negotiate with the buyer?
The basic problem with vegetables and fruits is, the farmers initially doesn't know the demand of a market. So the farmer takes the item to a market, and then he figures out the demand is in the market is less. Because of that, the price he's going to get is low. He cannot take the item back to another market because the item has already reached, and if you takes it to another market, it will be one more day old, and he will not even get the value of it, right? So the biggest thing which we need to solve as a nation is how do you match the supply and the demand,
Yeah.
and then bring all the supply and demand into a common platform for a negotiation. That is going to be one crucial factor. The second crucial factor is, even if you do that, let's say you bring the supply and the demand into a common platform where people can have a transparency in terms of that, grading or defining the quality. There has to be someone who's going to define. Let's say, for example, I come to the platform and I buy a tomato from the farmer at 100 rupees, right?
Yeah.
But then when the item reaches me, if I feel the quality is like very bad, right? Then I feel like a loser and I will leave the platform.
Correct.
So then I'll go to the offline place or the normal way of working.
Correct.
So what we need to ensure as we create the ecosystem is who's the guy who's going to define the quality, so that the buyer is going to trust and place his trade there.
Correct.
Because a different quality will have different prices. That is the beauty of this agricultural produce, right? It's not a manufactured thing where every
Yes.
quality is standardized, right? So I feel creating the platform where you create the transparency between the buyer and the seller, and at the same time also bringing in the quality assurance, which
Yes.
is going to be critical for agricultural produce. Actually,
The-
that is going to be the game changer. Actually.
That's a very valid point that you make. The quality assurance aspect, perhaps not very often spoken of, but it is going to be critical, especially as far as the agriculture sector is concerned. Krishna, let me ask you, what do you make of what has been announced? Where do you seek more clarity? Because to the point that Thiru was making, a lot of states have already liberalized the agri activities to a large extent. So what clarity would you require, and how do you see this moving forward?
Yeah, so when I look at these reforms, these are some of the welcome moves, because the country has been waiting for a very, very long time. And if we combine, I mean, Thiru was raising a very valid question: who controls the quality? Because somebody wants to buy from a smallholder farmer, he don't want to deal with that one farmer. One and one. Now, if you look at some other push which government is trying to bring, is a FPO and FPC, where they are forming a thousand group farmers and running like a private limited companies. And I think today we have got more than 500 FPOs running in the country. If we combine all these reforms along with these FPO kind of a structure,
Yeah.
and then Essential Good Commodity Act, I think the reconfiguration of supply chain will happen. So now the negotiating power of an MPO will increase, not only from the selling perspective, but also from the input perspective. They can reduce their cost because they can now
Correct.
demand in volume. Correct. So I think what I'll be looking forward from the government, that how they connect all these dots. We are talking about the contract farming reforms that bringing with the legal framework. That is also very, very welcome move. But then they have to connect all these dots together and bring it as a platform. And then we will see this shortened supply chain, better quality, and improving the income and livelihood of the farmers as well. So that's where I'll be seeking more clarity from the government, how these things are getting executed.
Yes, we are seeking clarity as well, and we're seeking details of both those ordinances, which are not available publicly at this point in time. So we don't know what the minutiae of the ordinances entail. But coming back to the two of you, and Thiru, let me start by asking you, you talked about how many states have actually moved quite aggressively to liberalize and open up even the agriculture sector. What is the crucial pain point that you continue to face that you believe now hopefully will be addressed through these measures as and when they're executed?
See, the crucial pain point, right? The government is placing an enormous amount of focus on developing FPOs, and they believe that FPOs are going to be the game changers. And let's say all subsidies, or let's say anything the government wants to execute, are planning to be executed through FPOs. But my experience, or our experience with FPOs, are actually the worst, because FPO acts as another middleman, and you see most of the FPOs we see are actually corrupt. They make a lot of money in between, again, the farmer and the buyer, and they also get a good amount of money out of it, right? So, if the government is going to put that much of trust on FPOs and believe that FPOs are the way for us to improve or make sure the farmer gets better value for his produce, I think we need to also put in mechanisms in place. How are you going to make sure the FPOs are like functioning for the benefit of the farmers?
Correct.
That's going to be crucial, and that actually also creates a kind of ecosystem where the farmers are forced to do whatever the FPO says, and the FPOs are getting more and more powerful.
Correct.
I'm not saying all FPOs are bad, but this is something which you're seeing on the ground, and actually it's right time for the government to focus on, let's say, if my direction is that I have chosen FPOs as a way to make sure everything reaches to the farmers, how am I going to make sure that these FPOs are having a proper governance in place?
Sure. That's an important point that you've raised. One of the safeguards that needs to be put in place. Krishna, to the point that was being made there by Thiru on FPOs and ensuring that FPOs don't replace the middleman, so to speak. What has been your experience in terms of the crucial pain points that require redressal?
Yeah, so I think, we have a similar experience working with the FPOs. So we are working with some of the FPOs of Rabobank or Samunati. And, I saw an approach of giving a 360-degree solution to these FPOs. So, there's a lender who is trying to finance that FPO because they are getting into a production of certain crops. And the lender is saying that, I will only get back the money when there is a market linkage to these produce. And I have seen that they are also helping those FPOs to sell the produce so that the money can come back. They are financing the input. I think, FPO alone will not be a solution, but the framework around it and creating a input, output, and the capital, working capital requirement linkage together will make these FPO more successful. And also government need to also, create a realization in the smallholder farmer that there's a benefit in becoming the part of the FPO. I've seen a lot of FPO get created on paper, and there are 1,000 farmers nominated for that, and they participated into it. They have an equity holding, but then after that, that dispersed because they don't see the value. Because at the end of the day, they're selling their input into the same mandi and realizing the same price.
Yeah,
they're not getting any value in terms of reducing their cost when they're buying inputs and other kind of support they're looking for, right? So I think it has to be a very, very organized effort, and government just can't give 30 lakh rupees to create an FPO to some NGO.
Yeah,
they need to tag that 30 lakh rupees to some kind of incentive that after 3 years the FPO has to be self-sustainable, or there is a penalty on top of it, right?
Yes.
But this is like a free money.
Yeah.
So I have seen many of the good FPOs also coming up, and they got the loan, the working capital from the bank on their own capabilities. But there are also examples of some FPOs which is just on pen and paper.
Sure.
So I think that's where we have to look into it. Yeah.
Well, Thiru and Krishna, thanks very much for joining us today with the initial take on what these reforms could mean for the agriculture sector. As I said, we don't have enough information. We don't have the fine print, the minutiae, but we'll get the two of you back when those ordinances are made public, and we do have those details to understand the real impact of the measures announced by the government. Hopefully, we will see forward movement. Thanks very much for joining us here on Young Turks. We'll take a break. There's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere.